I'm in my fine babe era, and you know one thing that fine babes do? We read. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you, can see it's a tall pile here. I'm going to be sharing with you some of the books that have changed my life, how they've changed my life, like what I've learned from the book. And I'm also going to be sharing with you some of the books I've read this year and what I'm currently reading and what I have in my roster. I'm also going to be sharing with you some tips to help you read more in 2024. So if you're interested in developing yourself personally, like you're interested in personal development this year, then watch this video. One thing I said, and I'll keep saying, is that develop, like everyone is like, oh, 2024, we're making more money, we're building bigger businesses, we're doing all these great things. But what about your soft skills? What about your critical thinking? What about your emotional intelligence? You know, there's so many soft skills that you as a founder should be learning. So I always have lofty goals for reading, and so far so good. I'm on track this year. I used to be a very big reader like in the past, and I found that in the last couple of years I haven't been reading as much. So I'm trying to get back on the horse, and I've been able to, at least this year, last year, I think that my reading wasn't so bad compared to the previous years. So this is my mission, to fortify myself with knowledge like I used to do very early on in my early 20s. We're going in our 30s now, and we need to be mentally fit for the journey that is ahead of us. So the very first book that has changed my life is by Adam Grant, and it's The Originals. This book is so dirty, like my camera is even making it look like nicer than it actually looks. It's so dirty because I've read it, like I read the life of this book. And the reason I know about this book was because I watched the TED Talk about The Originals, and I just became more interested in Adam Grant as an author, because I found out that the TED Talk was actually like a book. This book is really just about like how, like he says, how nonconformists move the world. It really dives into how people that don't think in a conventional way can sort of just like change the world. And this book I read how many years ago, and I just remember reading it and just feeling validated. I feel like this book is for someone that wants to build a visionary company. So a lot of things that I've done in my company in Lady Viva are things that I never saw people do. And sometimes when you're doing something that you haven't seen people do, you might question yourself and wonder if you're taking the right path. So I feel like this book is like, it validates you in that sense, because what exists already exists in the world. I feel like the world is waiting for businesses, for startups, for founders who are going to disrupt things. So this book is really about like disruptors, like people that come and like question how things are done, people that don't just settle on the default. It also like shares tips on how you can like encourage your team to be originals, or how you can encourage like creative thinking in your company. So this is a book if you're looking to be a disruptor in your industry and you're looking for like more resources and just learning from people who have done it. My next book that has changed my life is Start With Why. Oh my god, like Start With Why is a book that I recommend everyone that wants to start something new. Whether it's a business, it's a product, it's a project, it's a service, it's an NGO, it's an initiative, whatever you want to start, I think you should read this book first. This book really just dives into the heart of what you're doing, because I find that a lot of people in Nigeria these days are working from, oh, I need to put food on my table, oh, I need to build a business that is like this business, oh, I need to make XYZ amount of money. And while those things are fair, this book is for people that want to build, just like the originals, people that want to build companies that will outlive them, companies that will be like strong brands. And it really cites examples of like founders that have taken that route. One of the examples is Steve Jobs. He looks at like where Think Different comes from and how Steve Jobs was able to motivate his entire team to think different and build products that till today we're still using even though he's dead. So Start With Why is for visionaries, is for people that want to build they don't just want to build another business, but they want to build something that means something. Something that means something. They want to build something of value, of substance. So I find that when I'm struggling in my business, when I'm struggling making decisions or things are not going well, it's my why that actually keeps me moving. Like just knowing why I'm in business is why I'm still here. So I recommend this book for anyone that wants to build something that will last. My next book that has changed my life is Shoe Dog, Phil Knight. So Shoe Dog was a book that I just kept on hearing about like over and over and over again. And the book is by the founder of Nike. So I learned a lot from this book. So this book was a book that I got my management team to read. So we had like a little book club and we all read this book and like shared our findings. And one thing that inspired me was that they did not stop. I feel like, in fact, when I was reading this book, I was like, can these people get a break? Like, I never knew that Nike, even when they were making hundreds of millions of dollars, they were still struggling. And that's like really, really scary, like for any business owner to hear, because you think that when you get to a certain revenue point, like it'll be all good. Like it didn't get good for them till they went public. And a little part of me is like, if Nike did not go public, they could have gone bankrupt. And going bankrupt or like shutting down doesn't mean that your business is not. I said they were making hundreds of, it's just that they did not have cash in the bank because of their expenses. So this book for me was also comforting, because it's like sometimes I'm just like, business is crazy, and like I know how those months can be, and if you're a founder, you know how tough things can be, and it's hard to talk about these things. So this book was almost like a comfort, in the sense that okay, even a business that's this big is still going through these challenges, so you know I'm not alone. And yeah, and also the importance of teamwork, because if it was just by Phil, Nike would not be where it is today, you know. And Johnson was like a key part of like Nike's success. Like he was such a good salesperson. He was so passionate about like the success of Nike. So that just, for me, just shows that your team is also important. Like no matter how brilliant, how smart, how innovative you are, you need the right people to really get your company where it needs to get to. So the next, no, that's not the final, the next book, I have quite a bunch here. The next book that changed my life is Rick Warren's Purpose Driven Life. I love Rick Warren's Purpose Driven Life because it just gave me another perspective to life. I haven't read this book in so many years, like, and I really should, because there was one time I said I was going to be reading this book every year. This book was a book that I think I got from my mom. It was given to her as a birthday gift. Yeah, it's even like written here. It was given to her as a birthday gift on her 50th birthday. And I remember we were going through her gifts, and I just saw Purpose Driven Life, and I was just so like attracted to that title, because at that time in my life I was very about like my purpose, like finding my purpose. Why am I here on earth, and this book really helped me. And I just like how it like approaches worship. So this is a, by the way, this is a Christian book, so it's a faith book. Yeah, I feel like I need to mention that. And yeah, so it just gave me perspective about like life. And there's a way that we like perform Christianity, and we perform all these things, and this book sort of like gives another like look into how you can be a Christian. You can live a like your entire life can be in worship to God. You don't have to perform, every part. Like, you don't have to give some aspect of your life to God. Like, every part of your life, even as you run your business, as you wake up in the morning, everything that you do, you can do it and give glory to God. Like, it doesn't have to be like, Christianity doesn't have to be like an aspect of your life that you separate from your other life. Like, even in your secular life, like, you can still like worship God and give him the glory. Yeah, I just preached. So the last book that I'm going to be sharing today is, if you're following me on Instagram, on Twitter, I have talked about this book so much, and it's because this book literally changed my life. And it's Atomic Habits. Like, each time I read this book, I've read it twice now, so I just finished reading it this January, and like, every time when I'm reading the book, I'm just like, yes, like, that's how this book was speaking to me. And I'm so happy, because like, my life has changed because of this book. I'm telling you, because one of my biggest struggles, and I'm still a work in progress, like, the reason I picked up this book to even read was because I just felt like in my personal life I had no structure. I hate routines. I hate like doing the same thing over and over again. Like, I just would break out of routines, like, because it's just boring to me. And because I went to boarding house, like, it just gives me PTSD almost, like, to wake up at a certain time, sleep at a certain time. It just feels almost like your own little prison. But this book just gave me like a whole different perspective. In fact, I feel like if I want to review this book, I can review this book in like 3 videos, like part 1, part 2, part 3, but we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Go and pick up this book. Okay, I think let me just bring out like the one thing that I would say helped me. Like, there's so many things, but let me just bring this one out. And this one is about like, and this book has helped me become a better reader, by the way. Yeah, it just talks about like consistency. You know what, I'm sharing tips on how to read more this year, so I'll share some tips from this book, so that we can just visit other books. Okay, yeah. So what am I reading this year, and why? What I'm currently reading now is Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I don't know. This book is so good. And the thing is, I was reading this book based on, I want to learn like personal finance. But I feel like this book is almost like I'm getting tips even for business that I didn't expect I was going to get from it. So basically, it's just sharing people's stories. And I think that's why it's so easy to read. It's just sharing real life stories and real things that actually happened, citing like real experiences and like key activities like the World War and all of that, and how like that has affected like how people think, depression, inflation. Like, it's just a very relatable book. And I think that I'm halfway, and I started like 2 days ago, so I think I should be done in a couple days. Yeah. The next book I'm going to be reading is How to Develop Self-Confidence and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. So I was actually going to buy the How to Win Friends and Influence People. That was the book I was looking for, because everyone says that if you're an introvert looking to, like, you know, come out of your shell, that's the book to read. I used to do more speaking engagements like prior to COVID, and I feel like I've gotten a bunch of like invitations this year, so I feel like this year is going to be speaking in public era, interviews and stuff, so trying to prepare myself. This is a PSA to anyone that hasn't signed up for my mailing list yet. What are you waiting for? You're missing out on very, very specific tips, practical tips, more in-depth knowledge that you can get by just entering your email in the link down below. So my mailing list is literally just where I share additional tips or additional in-depth knowledge. So some things I talk about on this channel, I don't really, because of time, I don't really have the time to share them one-on-one and really like go deep into anything. So my mailing list is just my own way of sharing more on those things, and also sharing other things and links and resources that I come across in my day-to-day journey. So make sure that you're subscribed to my mailing list if you haven't subscribed yet. The next book I'm going to be reading is, and this book has been on my list for years, and the book is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. So it says, clarify your message so customers will listen. Use the 7 elements of great storytelling to grow your business. So I'm looking like this year, I'm looking to really be in my content creation era for my businesses. So yeah, this, after reading Psychology of Business, this is next on my list. Another book that I've read and I keep going back to, and it's actually one of my like favorite books, it's Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart. I love how like this book is chaptered. For instance, it talks about the places we go when things are uncertain or are too much. And what are those spaces? Stress, overwhelm, anxiety, worry, avoidance, excitement, dread, fear, vulnerability. And then it goes into all of those things like one by one. Like, I love this book so much. Like, if you're someone that has like struggled with like balancing your emotions, and you know sometimes it feels like you can't control them and they're like, whoa, this book, any book that just helps you identify the feeling, just makes you, it feels like you're already like one step in the right direction when you can't even understand like, oh, this is how I'm feeling. And then the book also like helps you address those feelings in a way that doesn't make you even feel worse off. I really, really love this book, and I feel like this book is so I don't read this book like from like front page to back page. I feel like I've even read the whole book, but I find that I just go in to read about certain things. So I'm going to be reading this book this year and probably every year for the next couple of years. I think that's about all the books that I've read and what I'm going to be reading so far. This is obviously not all that I'm going to be reading this year, but you know, for now this is my list, and maybe do a part 2 when I like have a list of, I already have a list, but like I'm still building like my next like set of books after this. So yeah, I said I was going to share tips on how you can read more, and I think the very first tip is stop reading books that are not interesting. Like, stop feeling the need to finish a book. And I think that was the one thing that held me back for a long time. I have some books that, even though they're quite good books, they are boring, and I find that I start reading it and then I stop, and then I go back to it, and then I stop. But I don't want to read other things because I want to finish that book. So I find that those kind of books like delay my reading goals. If you're not finding something interesting, stop feeling the need to finish it. Just pick up something else. Like, don't feel the need to read every book cover to cover. Sometimes you might need one chapter, sometimes you might need 2 to 3 chapters. But the one thing, I know there's a sense of accomplishment when you finish a book, and that's why you need to read books that you actually find interesting, because that way, when you want to feel that sense of accomplishment, you can look at your Psychology of Money or your Atomic Habits and say, oh, I finished that book, that makes me happy. So I think more people would actually finish books if they were reading books that they actually enjoyed. And so when it comes to books, I didn't share any fiction here, and that's not because I don't read fiction. I love fiction, and I tend to not mix my fiction and my non-fiction reading goals together, in the sense that, like, if I was going to do a video on books that's non-fiction that have changed my life, I can't mix it, because that's like I have like 3 or 4 or 5 books that I want to share. So yeah, read books that you find, whether it's romance or it's thriller or whatever. Like, stop reading books that you don't enjoy. I personally like personal development books because it helps me, but there's also a place for fiction. I find that fiction opens my mind. It helps me like think more creatively. So there's a space for that. There's a space for every type of reading. Another way to ensure that you meet your reading goals is to ensure that you're reading consistently. And this was a method that I learned. Like I told you that one thing that helped me read more was Atomic Habits. And in Atomic Habits, they talk about like consistency. Like, he mentions, oh, you want to go to the gym, you want to be consistent at being like a workout girly. Just go to the gym. Like, it doesn't matter if you spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes, just make sure that you're showing up. So I found that I just ensured that I was reading, whether it's a page or two. And the funny thing is, you can pick up a book and say, I just want to read a page, and you end up reading 10 pages. I feel like that's what always happens to me. The thing is just getting that like momentum, like just getting that first motivation to read, and then when you now start reading, like, you can now garner momentum, and it helps you like even go further than you even thought. Stop putting too much thought into it. Just say, even if it's one book, even if it's 2 sentences a day, make sure that I read every single day, and that has like tremendously worked for me. Another thing that I learned from Atomic Habits that I'm also like that's also helped me is identity-based goals as opposed to outcome-based goals. So before, I'll be like, oh, I want to read 20 books in a year, and that would be like it. But this year, I was like, I'm in my Fine Babe era. And as a fine babe, I need to fortify myself mentally. So basically, I'm reading based on I'm a reader. Readers read every day. So I'm not reading from, oh, I have to. Because then sometimes, like, when I give myself those goals, I'm like rushing through the chapters. And it's like, no, that's not the point. The point is not to finish the book alone. It's that with every book that I read, like, some sort of value is added to my life. So when I'm reading based on that, like, it's my identity. It's that, okay, with every book that I read, like, I'm becoming a better person. I'm learning something. And also, I find that when I read, it allows me to really, like, when we talk about critical thinking, it actually like fans the muscles of critical thinking when you read. When you read, it just opens your mind. Like, I don't know about you, but when I read, I have moments where I just pause and think about what I just read. So that way, you're exercising your critical thinking, muscle. And I feel like these days, people are not really like using, like, they are not really thinking. Like, everybody's just like saying what everyone else is saying. And I know that when you read a book, you're reading other people's words, but there's a way you read that allows you to like develop your own thoughts and develop your own like critique and your own like um, your own like thought process. It helps you articulate like your understanding of like what you're reading, and make sure that like when you're reading, make sure that you're taking that time to really like articulate everything you're reading. Don't just read to like mark something off your to-do list. Then the next thing that I would say, this one I just started doing recently, but even in the short time I've done it, I've been able to read more, and that's like downtime. So when you find yourself spending more time on social media and doing the things that you don't necessarily want to be doing, this is a very good tip for you. Put your apps on downtime. So I actually learned this from a TikToker. It's her name is Any Given Sunday. She mentioned that she puts her apps like once it's 10 p.m. like all the apps, you have access to it until like the time you set for the next day. And I googled how to do it, and like fantastic, like, because once that happened, you don't even realize that sometimes you'll be scrolling into like the night, like into 12 a.m., like 1 a.m. But like for me, once it's 10 p.m., I'm done with the apps. And because I might not feel sleepy at that time, I'm forced to pick up a book and read. And you'll be surprised at how much more reading you can get done because you don't presently have access. And the thing is, you will naturally reach for, because people would say that, oh, you might as well just keep your phone somewhere, put it on silent or whatever. But the thing is, I subconsciously reach for my phone and go to the apps without even thinking about it. So this is like that extra barrier that you need to help you to stay focused on your actual goals that you need. So I hope that you found these tips helpful. I hope that you're going to join me in my Fine Babe era. I hope you come into your Fine Babe era. I hope that you're reading more in 2024. If you're currently reading any book, share with me in the comment section below. I want to know what you're reading. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in my next video. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like, all the good stuff. See you in my next video. Bye.